Yo, what is up, guys? I am Josh, and this is hashtag Life Choices.
I am Anath. This is the podcast where we aim to help you make the best life choices.
I am David, here to welcome you to Situational Saturdays.
Lastly, I am Lemuel, and this is our weekly segment where we talk about different situations we face in life.
We take both real and hypothetical situations from you guys and ask each other, if you were in this situation, what would you do? And once again, this is another episode of Situational Saturdays, and today we are discussing a problem from one of David's friends. So what is our situation for today?
Okay, so today's situation is from my friend named Lai.
Lai.
So Lai shared this situation. She took a subject that she didn't really like, but it was presented available to her. Now, she had a lot of options because this was an elective in college. She could have chosen a management-related course, but she instead chose history. Now, there's nothing wrong with history. A lot of people love it.
She just doesn't like it.
She just doesn't like it, especially with the way the
Lai doesn't like
professor... Lai doesn't like
Lai
it.
doesn't like it. Yeah. So this situation, to me, we could kind of face it on two different approaches. So one is we could put ourselves in the situation that if you're in a situation that you don't like being in, but are forced to be in, because like in this case, you can't really, like, I don't think you can drop the subject anymore. You'll have to repeat another semester. So you're forced into this situation. What are practical tips where you could be able to make the most of that situation? And second is, she is now regretting not having chosen the other choices. What are different ways that we can face regret? So let's go for the first one. What would you do if you're forced in a situation that you have to be in, but you don't like being there?
Okay, so I can relate to this very much because in this semester I am doing a bunch of classes that I really don't like. And so that includes social science and history and Filipino, and I can't speak Filipino, so it's very difficult.
Oh, it's a bad day for social sciences, history, language, social sciences.
But
Yeah.
we don't have anything against you guys. I will love history.
We don't have anything about those subjects, just Anath. Anath
Just
doesn't,
Anath.
yeah, he doesn't like those
Yeah.
subjects.
And so I was really detesting it. And the reason is being a management student, knowing that I had to take classes that had nothing to do with management really annoyed me. And I didn't like being there. And so, a lot of things were going through my head. Oh, should I drop out of school? Should I drop out of my course? What should I do so that I don't have to put effort into these classes that I don't like? Eventually, I was talking to a friend, and this friend was saying that in life, when we have to do the things that we don't like to do, it builds character. And this really did open my eyes, because eventually when we start working, we are going to be in situations where we have to do things that we don't like. And when we already have experience of doing the things we don't like from university, it makes working much easier, because the reality is that we will never get it the way we want it, right? And in work, people will be telling us what to do and how to do it. And sometimes we just need to submit. And so when I was able to shift my perspective and realize that doing these classes, which I don't like, can actually help me in the future by building patience, building perseverance. Once I shifted my perspective to that, it helped me actually say, okay, I'm going to do this. Though I don't like it, I'm going to do it. So really, to your friend Lai, I would say shift the perspective of your view on history, because you may not like it, but there will always be things we don't like. But when we learn to put all our effort into it, we will be rewarded because of it.
Yeah, and it's a natural reality in life that there will be a lot of things that we're going to be doing that we don't want to do. So we can't really escape it. It is going to be there. It is, what's the word? Inevitable. It is inevitable that we'll face situations like that. So like Anath said, the most important thing that we can do is really shift our perspective. I'm brought back to an example we brought up last Table Talk Thursdays, which is the life of David from the Bible, that I don't think he wanted to be a shepherd. He knew that he could be king and that he was set up to be king. But he was still forced. He still had to be a shepherd. He still had to take care of his sheep. He had to fend off wild animals. I don't think he liked doing that. At the same time, he had to serve his brothers. The guy who was told that he was gonna be king was told by his dad that he had to serve his brothers. I think that is a situation he doesn't want to be in because he knows he could be elsewhere. But like Enath said, it's not the experience per se that we should focus on, but the things that we can learn. Just think about it. He was a shepherd, and because of that, he was trained using the slingshot. And this slingshot was instrumental in him leading up towards helping his country. There was this guy named Goliath. You guys know this story, David and Goliath. And the slingshot was the weapon of choice that actually killed the giant that everybody was so afraid of. And why is that? It is because he went through the process. I mean, he could have decided to just skip it. He knew he was going to become king. It was prophesied. So he could have just gone towards that. But he respected the process. It was something that he had to go through. And that is also something that we need to realize with the things we face in life. We're going to have to face things like history that we don't like, but we know that there are things that we can extract from it. Like Enath said, patience. In the case of David, it's using a slingshot. And in my personal experience, there's a lot of things that I didn't want to do. And say, for example, I'll go back to another illustration that I brought up last Thursday, which is I didn't really want to broadcast on radio. I don't find myself very comfortable speaking, thinking that a lot of people will be listening. So when my parents gave me that opportunity, I was very shy and hesitant, and I was forced into it because I was already sitting in the chair and they were like 3, 2, 1, we're rolling, and I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? And I was freaking out. But then I realized that I could just make the most of the situation. I could give it a shot, and it was actually that experience that allowed me to be able to be seen by one of the producers from this radio station and allowed me to host in that program. And because of that, I realized that though I did not want to be in that situation before, I realized that there's so much I can learn. And the things that I learned being a radio broadcaster, I can apply to this podcast. The way that I can speak, the way that I pace myself. Because trust me, when I first was on radio, I would speak so fast because of how nervous I was, to the point that nobody would really understand what I'm saying. I mean, I hope I'm speaking at a good pace right now, but those things you can pick up and you can learn. And though you don't like the experience, you will definitely like the rewards of it.
Enath did mention that doing things you didn't like builds character, and Josh mentioned that doing something you don't like might open the door to something that you are gonna be doing and something you're passionate about. And I just like to give a more personal example. When I was a kid, I was made to do a lot of things that I would complain about. For instance, doing chores. For instance, eating vegetables. And I don't know.
Very universal examples. I don't think a lot of kids were very enthusiastic about that.
Yeah, so I was there on the table stomping, where's the hot dog? But there was no hot dog, and they wouldn't cook me a hot dog. And I just had to finish the vegetables. And I was, at that time, grudgingly eating it. I'm not gonna eat unless there's a hot dog. But then I got hungry, and eventually I ate it. And I don't know if it's a sign of maturity, but eventually I got to enjoy the taste of vegetables. I developed a taste for it. And I just like to bring forth another analogy, this time with a car. If you're in sales and your company provides you with the absolute ugliest car in the world, but your client is somewhere down like 500 kilometers away, no matter how much you hate that model of car, you're gonna take it, right? You're not gonna ride. You're not gonna walk there, ride a bike to your destination. You're gonna drive that car regardless.
You'll get there in like 10 years.
And you'll end up appreciating that car, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. There are things provided to you that a lot of people don't have. And I think schooling is an incredible privilege. So the fact that you're even in it, even if you don't like it, maybe just take a step back and take a moment to feel grateful and get what you can from it. And you might not like history, but maybe in the future, someone raises a conversation about this historical point in the past, and you somehow remember that. You somehow connect with that person that you wouldn't have done otherwise if you just skipped class because you didn't like history. So what I'm getting at is, you have all these things provided to you. Don't waste it by not being invested. Give it a chance, and it's a privilege provided to you. A lot of people, I'm sure, would really want to just be able to go to school. So don't waste it, right? Make the most of it, even if you don't like it at the moment.
Yeah, it's just a shift of perspective. And I want to share a personal experience, not of mine, but of my family. My mom grew up without her mother. And so that story, like, I don't think any kid would want not to have parents. But my mom didn't grow up with not only mother, but both parents. And it was a struggle. It wasn't somewhere where she wanted to be. But she made the most of her situation. She got to know her foster family really well. And this actually allowed her to, form really close bonds to people that eventually became her family. And despite that situation, she wasn't very fortunate as a kid. So she had to attend public school. So this was a struggle. And this is, again, where she didn't want it to be. But there was this one day where a school came over to her public school looking for potential students that could be scholars, because there's this program that wanted to take people from public schools and basically put them through a good education growing up. And so, because my mom made the most of the situation that she was in, even if she didn't like being in public school, she really worked really hard to get good grades. She was noticed by this program. And at that point in time, the program decided to say, hey, you will include you in our program. And at the start, there were 200 students in this scholarship. But since my mom wanted to make the best of every situation, she didn't allow herself to think, oh, you know what, I'll just be like everybody else. I will strive to make the most of this opportunity. So who would have wanted to study in a public school? Probably not many people. And I don't want to put down public schools, but a lot of people aspire for a better education. And so that's what my mom did. She made the most of every opportunity. And so when the time came that she was blessed with the opportunity to become a scholar, she was chosen for it. And eventually this extended to her master's degree. They started at 200. By the time she was in college, there were 10 left. By the time she was at master's, she was the one scholar left. And that was because she didn't choose to look at what she didn't like. Instead, she focused on what she could learn from that situation.
I would also like to share something from my personal experience. When I was first year of college, I chose to get this elective also on economics. So I don't have that kind of background and I have nothing against economics. But at that time, I found it to be a really difficult course. And I also found my teacher was not the teacher I hoped it would be. The person only had the same last name. So when she entered the room, I was like, who was that? And apparently it was not the teacher I thought it would be. So I had a hard time with that subject. First exam, I was close to failing, like 1 point, and I would have failed. And that was an eye-opener for me. So I guess if you were in that situation, what I would suggest is to keep pushing forward, keep moving forward, and to keep showing up even though it's hard. So what I did is every morning, I would go to the university early and I would open the book that we were using and I would just read. There were a lot of times I don't understand what I was reading, but apparently slowly I was absorbing these concepts. So I was able to redeem my grade that semester and I was able to build a foundation because eventually in our course we had to take more economic classes. And apparently that experience gave me a solid foundation to attain an even better performance in my subject to the point that I can teach my fellow batchmates on economics. So the key there was to just show up and keep on learning, although it's not necessarily your forte at that time.
Yeah, and the other part of this discussion is basically how to face regret and how to deal with it. But we're kind of short on time, and this always happens. We end up saying a lot of things and we end up being short on time. So maybe we could just put that idea on bank and then we could get back to it some other time and we could discuss in another situational Saturday and discuss what can we do when we are faced with things that we regret. So at this point in time, I'm just going to recap the things we had discussed throughout this podcast. And ultimately, we wanted to answer the question that if you're in a situation you're forced to be in, but you don't want to be there, what can you do? We discussed 5 things, I guess, reminders that we want to give to you when you're in that situation. So first is remind yourself and put yourself into perspective that it builds character. Doing things we don't like builds character. Just like working out, you don't want the pain of working out, but you definitely want the body it brings. That those abs, those muscles, you're gonna want those, but not the pain that it brings. But like what people say, no pain, no gain. The second is go through the process. You will benefit from it, I assure you, if you do not give up. There's this verse in the Bible that I always love holding on to, which is Galatians 6 verse 9. Do not be weary in doing good, for in due time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. That's the crucial thing. If you do not give up, you will definitely reap a harvest. Third is, you may not like the experience, but you'll enjoy the rewards. Like we said, there is a benefit to it if you stick through it till the end. Fourth is, you might develop a taste for something throughout this experience, and you might not have discovered it otherwise because you just chose to be where you wanted to be. And fifth is, don't waste the opportunity. Don't waste the opportunity by spending your time complaining about it. Instead, change your perspective and look at it from the perspective of what can you learn instead of what don't I have. And that wraps up our podcast for today. And with regards to the topic of regret, we could visit that some other situational Saturday. Just stay tuned for that. And at this point in time, we just want to thank our sponsors. We don't have any sponsors still, but I guess this is just a public call that if you guys want to help us out and you support what we're doing, we would very much appreciate that you sponsor the program. There are two ways to do that. First is patreon.com/lifechoicesph. You could pledge a monthly amount that you could give every month to support our podcast. And you could also send us an email on lifechoicesph@gmail.com should you have a business, online business that you want to advertise on this program to our listeners. That would be very much appreciated. So we just want to thank you guys for listening to the podcast. If you want your situation to be featured on this podcast, you can email us at lifechoicesph@gmail.com. And with that said, hope to have you guys back here on Monday for Movie Mondays. But before you go, we just want to remind you, in this life, we have no choice but to make choices. So choose wisely. See you in the next podcast.